Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's being brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and leave a legacy. I'm doing a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries, brokers, and M&A experts from across the country and even in your town. So joining me on this segment is David Jacobs with Link Business in Silicon Valley. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
David, tell us a little bit about your work and specifically, who are the types of clients that you specialize in helping?
Sure. So my practice here in Silicon Valley is a little unique. I work with clients all over the country in the lower middle market. So those are companies with $3 to $20 million in revenue. And my target industries are software-enabled services, and general services businesses like recruiters.
So the inspiration for this series has been this great resignation, which seems to have brought a lot more buyers into the market and maybe even motivated some sellers since it's a seller market. Have you seen the same thing in your area, or how has this affected you guys?
You know, for good quality businesses that are brought to market, there's just an overwhelming amount of interest from the buyers. And I think there's a lot of people that spent many years in the corporate world and now they want to try their hand in entrepreneurship. And the change that was brought about by COVID and really just it's the impetus to try something new and see if they can be a success standing on their own, running a smaller business rather than being a contributor in a large corporation.
For folks that are selling, oftentimes I understand it's probably the first time they're going through this process, so they probably have a lot of questions. What are some of the most pressing questions that you get from first-time sellers?
Back when I sold my business in 2013, it's a very opaque process, but it can be very straightforward. And it's somewhat like selling any other product. And you package it up and you present it to the prospective buyers. And then you walk through the introduction and getting to know the buyers and then negotiating the price and the deal terms, which are also very important here. And sometimes the deal closes. What's unique about selling a business is, unlike selling a product, there's only one. So that creates a slightly different dynamic that most business sellers aren't used to because they've been selling products or services their whole life. And having been through it as a broker for a few years now, and also as a seller myself, I feel like I understand that journey and really can add value. Some of it is factual and based on the valuation, and other is just the emotional roller coaster of finally selling a business that you've invested so much into, of your personal attention. It's different to be an owner selling than an employee switching jobs, and I think that's kind of the vagueness where I can come in and add some value.
For first-time sellers, do they, when they approach you, do they already have like some preconceived notions and perhaps maybe even holding on to some myths or misconceptions that they've heard about the process of selling? Have you heard anything like that?
There is a lot of misinformation out there, and I question the reason for it. A lot of people come in with, especially with a software company, they read the headline news and see, for example, maybe Facebook just bought a company for 100 times revenue, or they hear Microsoft is buying somebody for 75 times earnings, or these crazy valuations. And there's a whole cottage industry of kind of repeating these mantras to sell tickets and books and grow your business. The best thing to do is just to kind of come in and look at what other companies similar to yours sold for. It's possible that Facebook did pay 100 times earnings or 100 times revenue, but there was usually something else they're buying there. They're not necessarily buying the cash flow. They might have had hundreds of millions of users. And when you look at the price per dollar revenue, it seemed astronomical, but the price per registered user was actually very reasonable. And it's kind of understanding the deal and what the true value is of the company being brought to market is, and putting a fair price. One thing I will say is that unlike selling a typical product, the idea of starting high and negotiating down doesn't work because it negatively selects the buyers. You want a buyer with access to virtually unlimited capital, but very limited time. And the idea of entering into a price negotiation is not what they're going to do. Having a reasonable price and attracting a fair amount of attention and getting a little competition going between the parties is what effectively pushes the price up, and also make sure that the deal terms are reasonable.
When folks are selling for the first time and you start to work with them, have you ever spotted any like big common mistakes that people make when they're preparing their business for sale, or any pitfalls that they've fallen into? What have you seen?
Um, yeah, I just, overhyping the business, I think, is a mistake. Obviously, business should always be presented in a favorable light. But when you kind of, somebody told me that, you stand with your heels on the line and you lean forward. Some businesses take a step off the line, and the sophisticated business buyers, which are the ones that I work with, they're mostly with private equity firms and family offices. They're very bright, and they look at hundreds of businesses a year. They know exactly what they're doing. They sense this right away, and the thing they really want to avoid is an unreasonable seller. And if you appear to be overhyping your business, you're going to be considered to be unreasonable. And they don't want to, invest the hundreds of hours going through due diligence only to have you try to renegotiate the price, or decide it's not enough, even though it was enough when you started the process. So, um, you know, being straightforward and presenting it as it is, and disclosing what kind of challenges there are and how you've tried to work around them in the past, I find really builds credibility, and is not a typical approach that people think, but it's what works.
Great insight. David, you mentioned selling your business previously. Was that your inspiration for getting into this field, or tell us a little bit about that? What inspired you to get in this field and helping other business owners sell their companies?
Sure. So I'll tell you, I took over, it was a family business, and we were print brokers. We sold commercial catalogs, like a very manufacturing kind of outsourced focus. We would sell like a truckload or more of catalogs. And I had built some software that allowed us to do two things. One is, you could put in the specs, and it would break it out to, what type of equipment, specific makes and models of printing presses are needed. And then it would match it to what printers in the country had that specific equipment. The idea being, if you put it in specs, I know which printers to talk to get the right price. And then we also tracked a database of past prices, so we would know which printers were, hungry for work and willing to discount, because that changes over time as their capacity fluctuates. And we grew to be pretty large. We were the third largest in the country doing what we do. And when I went to sell, having never been through the process, my thought was, I'll find a broker that'll help guide me. And uh, I couldn't find a single broker that understood the software piece. And while we were a software company, we were print brokers. The software was a key to our success, and really allowed us to grow to 35 people and survive when everybody we knew in the industry was shutting down because it just got so tough. Um, so I had to sell it myself, and that was kind of I made a mental note of that. And when I got a random call from Link wanting me to join, um, I thought, I've been through this, and I've seen it from the seller side, and maybe I can help some other people out, and of course, earn a living for myself in the process. So,
Terrific. David, before I ask you my last question, for someone considering selling their software business or company today, but they don't know where to start or how to even select a business broker to work with, what would you say is the most important thing they should consider when choosing an intermediary?
um, there are all kinds of intermediaries, and I'm not the only one. There are other people that are out there that are very good, and then there are lots of people out there that are not. So, you need to meet multiple people and have some conversations and see who you align with, because as you go through this process, if there's any level of success, you really need somebody that you can trust to represent you. The unflattering things about your business will come out, and buyers will potentially say things that you'll find insulting. And having a trusted advisor that can kind of guide you through those potential landmines where you think like, oh, he really helped coach me through, and we put together a good deal, I think, is key. So it's, anybody can run a spreadsheet, but it's hard to find somebody where, mentally you're aligned. And I think that would be my advice.
For someone listening now that's considering selling and would like to speak with you, how do they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find. I have a website of my own that I run that is davidjacobsbusinessbroker.com. And if you search it, it should come up. My phone number is 415-297-8562, or you can email me, David.jacobs at linkbusiness, linkbusiness.com.
This has been terrific, David. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with my audience today, and I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
Thank you, Mark. Always fun to be part of your efforts.
That was David Jacobs with davidjacobsbusinessbroker.com. And this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published so they can educate consumers, grow their businesses, and leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.